The cream of the crop! Nobody does it better.
What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Fly, and I was going over some recent One Piece chapters as well as Oden's flashback, and something caught my eye. When Oden finally confronted Kaido in the forest, Oden mentioned that he originally wanted to go to the island known as Onigashima now, that Kaido inhabited while he was drinking, but at the time, the island had no name. In fact, Oden called it an empty island, and in recent events when Marco and Nekomushi finally made it to Wano, saying, oh, Onigashima, so that's what it's called now, kind of hinting that the island Onigashima was not its original name, and in fact probably didn't even have a name to begin with. It seems as though Onigashima used to be an inhabited island until Kaido made it his home base, and it was Kaido that actually named it Onigashima. And I actually think the naming of this island is going to be important because it probably ties with Kaido's flashback and his heritage. In chapter 985, Kaido wants to expand his forces and go into the mainland Wano and creating a new Onigashima, hence the new Onigashima project. Going as far as renaming the land of Wano New Onigashima. And I think there's a lot more going on than we're led to believe. Back in Oden's flashback when Kaido and Oden were fighting and when Oden was about to get executed, Kaido said finding the Kozuki clan is going to be exterminated or at least extinguished. And that kind of raised some flags in my head because it sounded like Kaido had a grudge or a vendetta against the Kozuki clan. It kind of sounded like he knew that. In the legend of Momotaro, Onigashima is actually a mythical island, the land of the ogres, or at least the demons. And although there are no ogres or demons that are known to exist in the world of One Piece, there are creatures that share similarities and fit the description. And I'm talking about the ancient giants, oars. Oars' clan are ancient giants that look and resemble ogres and have demon-like features such as horns. And there's been several theories regarding them, such as they're the ones who created Wano, or at least the flower capital was the mainland of Wano, but Oars and his clan pulled the rest of the continents and surrounded Wano with all their different islands, and that's why there's so many different seasons in Wano. Also another theory that Kaido and the numbers are descendants of the ancient giants. So what I'm suggesting is that Onigashima was actually the home of the ancient giants. And there might be some truth to that theory, as Oars was called the continent puller because they are so massive they're able to pull islands on their back. And if you look at the map of Wano, it looks like a mismatched puzzle where a bunch of islands just somehow got together surrounding one particular main island, such as the flower capital. And although Kaido has pimped up his island quite a bit over the years, like putting a mansion on the island, there are some natural things that are on the island, or things that we've seen to put evidence that there used to be giants that lived on the island, such as the giant sword when you enter Onigashima, as well as the giant skull with horns. So it's quite possible that Kaido learned of his heritage, that he's a descendant of the ancient giants, and decided to go back to where it all started, his homeland, Onigashima. Bringing it back to Thriller Bark and the knowledge that we know now, Thriller Bark and fighting Gecko Maria actually gave a lot of hints to Kaido, his motives, as well as his powers. This is actually the first arc where you even hear mention of Wano country. We know the story. Gecko Maria went to Wano once, fought with Kaido, and then eventually lost. All his crewmates were dead, and then he went to go grave rob Ryuma and took the sword and his body. And Gecko Maria ended up creating an undead army that cannot die by using dead bodies and putting shadows into them. And knowing that we know now, it's actually a hint to Kaido and his ability, his invincible story, his myth about him that he cannot die, he's invincible, nothing could really pierce his body. And what better way to kill an unkillable man than use an unkillable army? Looking back at Thriller Bark, Oda really is a clever man in the way he planted the seeds of Wano and the myth of Kaido. And what's interesting is that Gecko Maria, after fighting Kaido, created this unkillable army of shadow zombies. He had an ace in the hole, which was Oars, the mythical ancient giant. And with Oars and using a very powerful shadow, he planned on getting his revenge on Kaido and eventually becoming Pirate King. But if all the seeds that Oda planted about Wano and Kaido happened in Thriller Bark with the undead zombies and the immortality as well as Wano, then Oars might be another clue to Kaido and his origin, as well as Onigashima, where if Gecko Maria figured out that Kaido's a descendant of the ancient giants, then what better way to kill Kaido and take him down than his own kind, an ancient giant. Oars and Kaido actually have a lot of similarities, mostly being the physique as well as the horns on their head. The horns on their head is actually identical, which is why many people believe that Kaido is a descendant of the ancient giants. So what I'm saying is that Thriller Bark is actually a very important arc and actually might even hint at the origins of Kaido and Onigashima. And with the giant skull with horns and the giant sword that we saw at the front entrance of Onigashima, I think it's safe to assume that the ancient giants, or at least some sort of giant race, used to reside on Onigashima before Kaido. And Kaido figured this out and he went back to reclaim what was rightfully his, or maybe that's what he thinks. Now exactly why Onigashima ended up becoming an empty island until Kaido came around, I'm not exactly sure myself. Maybe there was a big battle, which is why there's a sword on Onigashima. Maybe the ancient giants had a little inner turmoil with themselves and got into a big brawl and they end up leaving themselves near extinct, not extinct but almost near it, and there's very few survivors. Or maybe the ancient giants did used to reside on Onigashima, but because of the Kozuki clan and wanting to close the borders of Wano from everyone else, the giants kind of got upset and maybe got into a battle with these guys, or just left and was upset because of the fact that they did not want to close the borders themselves. I'm not entirely sure about that theory, but it's just something that I thought about. And that could be a reason why Kaido has a deep grudge against the Kozuki clan, because he kind of knows what they did in the past to his clan. That might not be true, but it could make sense. Maybe I'm reaching and it's not as deep as I'm making it out to be, but I'm certain that the origin of Onigashima is related to giants in some way, somehow, and most specifically the ancient giants. There's a reason why it's been mentioned a few times now that Onigashima used to not have a name and used to be an empty island, as well as the giant skull, the giant sword, and Kaido renaming Wano the new Onigashima. I think that name is gonna have a lot of weight and there's a lot more to it than relatable. Anyways, that's all guys. Don't forget to rate the video, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay notified. Put down in the comments what you guys think. I think Onigashima is gonna have a lot more history behind it and its origin. Also, another thing I want to bring up is that Oars was considered to be an evil person and led an evil band of pirates. I personally believe that's a lie made by the government, and in fact that Oars and his clan actually helped many people throughout the world, maybe Wano as well, by pulling continents and getting them away from the world government and their influence, and thus he was hunted down and died in the northern continent, because Gekko Moria did say, or at least Chopper did, is that he has a wound in his upper shoulder and he died in a northern continent in just his loincloth. I think that that's not entirely true, in that he was actually hunted by the world government and he ended up dying in the northern continent or something like that. And why exactly Kaido named it that and why he wanted to go there in the first place, as well as naming Wano the new Onigashima, there's a lot more than we're led to believe. But that's it. I hope you guys have a good day and a good night. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Toodles.